It seems like you run across every draft cycle one or two quarterbacks that start to pick up momentum and steam and buzz around their prospects as a prospect, around their draft stock, talking about how they're starting to shoot up boards, which has always been interesting to me because you would think for a lot of these NFL teams, wouldn't you have gotten the grading done months ago? Like, maybe in some cases it's draft media, draft Twitter finally catching up to the real world. Maybe in some cases it's just a perceived thing. Maybe there's something that happens in that draft cycle that leads to these prospects getting more attention and getting a new set of eyes and a new focus. I don't know what it is, but we seem to always run across this every year. There's one of these two guys that people really start to buzz around. And it seems that way, especially with draft media and draft Twitter. And I'll say, like, maybe every once in a while, it's somebody valid or legitimate. But then you've got Davis Mills of Stanford, and I don't see it, and I don't get it. And I look and I've seen in recent weeks people talking about this great arm talent that he has, talking about how, he's similar to Mac Jones, and that if you're talking about maybe taking a quarterback at the tail end of round one, or maybe trading back up into the tail end of round one to double dip in the first round and take a quarterback that you can have develop, that Davis Mills would be that guy. And I'm just wondering why. What did people see out of him at Stanford that was so unique? What did people see out of him at Stanford that was so star-spangled awesome? I'm not saying this to rag on the kid. I'm not sitting there to say it to crap on him as a prospect or anything like that. It's as much as anything me legitimately trying to figure out and understand like what people are really seeing in this guy. Like, is this a thing where people are looking too closely and they're maybe thinking, hey, all these big name quarterbacks usually have one or two guys that ends up being better than some of the other more highly touted names? Is this somebody because of the program they played at that they're starting to get associated with a certain thing? Is it because of the fact that he beat out KJ Costello's sorry ass and sent KJ off to Mississippi State so he could have a shot in 2020? Like what is it? Because I got to tell you, like, if this dude was so star-spangled awesome, we'd be talking about him a whole hell of a lot more, especially based off of what I've seen people on draft Twitter especially talking about him in recent weeks, and even some of the draft media. Again, I don't get it. Like, he looks the part. He's 6'4"-ish, 225. So when you're thinking like prototype-ish type of size, yeah, he's got that. Pretty durable guy. So again, one of the key traits for a quarterback that you're drafting high, especially if you're drafting them in round one, or you can even say like round two or round three, where you're anticipating them being potentially long-term starter. You want the ability of availability, and I certainly don't see any reason to believe that he couldn't have that. Like, he has decent pocket presence. Like, it's not top of the line in this class, but it's certainly better than several other prospects, including some of the more highly touted ones. I think he's a guy that generally makes pretty good decisions. Mechanically has a little work to do, but he's not horrendous. But that's like, you notice how I'm saying these things, and it's not like a ringing endorsement. It's like some of it is kind of check the box. Yeah, he kind of has that. Yeah, he kind of has that. But when I'm thinking about a guy like this, to have people buzzing about him so much, I have to ask, what is the special trait, or what are those special traits that you project to that next level that indicate that this guy could really be something? Because I'm seeing people talk about, well, if you miss out on one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in this draft, like Davis Mills is a pretty nice consolation prize. He might be better than 1 or 2 of them that were taken before him. Seeing like, hey, this might be a quarterback class that has 6 guys taken in round 1. I think people are insane. Like, even when I go to ask about him on Twitter and ask, like, what do people see in him? The answers I get really aren't refuting anything that I've actually seen. Like, I ask those questions sometimes to say, okay, sometimes it is like you get very focused on one thing and you kind of get that confirmation bias and you look for that thing, and you blind yourself to other things. So it is important sometimes to step outside of yourself and say, okay, what has he got? Like, am I underselling other components of his game? Am I underselling other parts of his game? But I don't think he is. I don't think I am. Because in some of the most key, important areas, he is a step behind and a bit of a step behind. Arm strength, it's not there. It's lucky if it's average. I'd associate it more with being below average, frankly. And you see this play out, like throws deeper down the field have got to get a lot of air under them. They got to have a lot of hang time. And you can see sometimes that he's really trying to put a lot on the ball for some of those deeper throws, which then impacts his accuracy, which is already kind of suspect as it is. His ball placement, I thought, was kind of all over the place at times. He might get it in the general wheelhouse, but there's something different between getting it in the general wheelhouse and actually being able to hit the receiver in the right spot with the right throws in the right situations. Like, you don't want a guy streaking across the middle of the field on a slant or a crossing pattern and you're throwing way back here behind him. You want to be able to hit him here or hit him where you're leading the receiver. Get him in an athletic position. Keep him in that athletic position. Having to reach back like this kills his momentum. And you saw these types of throws out of Davis Mill, which thought to me was both a combination in some instances of a lack of arm strength and a lack of accuracy. Just a lack of a skill of ball placement and being able to throw with the right timing to be able to hit receivers in stride and hit them in the right spot. Like, to me, it was strikingly obvious watching him on film. And then I look at him and I say, well, he's also not a really great athlete. I didn't see it at Stanford. I didn't see a guy that could change the game with his feet. I didn't see a guy that you're going to be able to depend upon to make big plays happen with his feet. So, I mean, I got to ask, like, what am I missing here? Like, there are other components of his game that are strong. And that's why I don't have him rated as like some 6th or 7th round pick, because there are projectable traits and talents there that I do like. But I feel like where I have him graded is more of an accurate reflection, admittedly, of the type of prospect that he is. He's more of a 3rd round type of guy. When you're telling me that a guy lacks mobility and athletic ability, and I don't give a shit if you want to talk about pro days or individual workouts, anything like that. I'm talking about the stuff that I actually saw in 2020 that manifested on the field. There was a lack of athleticism there in his game. You take that and combine that with kind of buckshot, scattered, inconsistent accuracy, mediocre to average accuracy at best, and combine that with a slightly below average arm, like, why would you draft that in the 1st round? And when you look at some of the other traits, like some of the other good traits, some of the mental aspects, field vision, decision-making, pocket presence, like he's average and above there. That's good. But to counterbalance some of these other things, he's got to be more like grade 2 exceptional, and he's not. Like, I described him to somebody recently as a great value Mac Jones. And that's what I think he is. He's that generic Lady Lee, great value version of him. That's exactly what the hell he is. I think, and I don't know why the hell, that's actually kind of freaky. I just had something drop off the wall. Y'all ain't gonna haunt me. I lived with that demon for like 5 years. Shit ain't scaring me no more. But what is it? Like, what am I missing here? Questionable arm strength, questionable accuracy, questionable mobility. Those are 3 things in today's game that those are the traits that you want to default to. Those are the traits that you want to be able to have translate, and they don't translate very well for him. And as I'm thinking about like comparisons for him, you could look in the description box, like maybe his ceiling, his very, very best, he develops into a Kirk Cousins type of passer. And again, like I said, sometimes it's easy to rag on those guys that fall into like the 10 to 14 or so rankings in terms of NFL starting quarterbacks. But Kirk Cousins is a top half of the league starting quarterback. He was a guy that was a former 4th round pick out of Michigan State. Like, he worked on his game, he developed his game, he has some flaws, but he also has some pretty good strengths. You know, and maybe that's the type of player that Davis Mills could develop into. So me putting a 3rd round grade on him, I don't think is necessarily a huge slap in the face. I think it's just more of a reflection of, I feel like from my perspective, my opinion alone, that it's a more accurate reflection of the level of prospect that we're dealing with here. Current state. hard to project sometimes how these things are going to develop. But when I look and I say, how much is he going to improve that accuracy? How much is he going to be able to flash more mobility and athleticism in his game, arm strength? Feels like a guy to me that's a very low-end starter in the league or a quality high-end type of backup, which is where I bring in the Kyle Allen comparison. Now, Kyle Allen, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was originally undrafted. But I see similarities there. Decent size, some other good parts to his game, but just lacks the overall athleticism and arm talent to be a big-time quarterback or a big-time prospect. Yeah, he's cool, talking about Davis Mills, but he's not a guy that I'd certainly want to spend a first-round pick on. And Ryan Pace, don't you get desperate. Don't you dare think about it, you dumb piece of crap. No, sir. No, sir. We will not be having any Davis Mills picked at 20s. We will not be having any Davis Mills traded up into the tail end of round 1 for him because you're desperate. That's what happens. Desperate teams do dumb things. No, sir. No, 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 no. If he happens to be there in a round 3, I'm cool with that. I could even understand a round 2 because you feel like positional value and need, etc. But no, this is not a first-round talent. And if you say, well, what's the difference between him and Mac Jones? I think Mac Jones has a little bit stronger arm, certainly a more accurate arm, and I think he's more elite in some of the mental traits and instincts for the position than somebody like a Davis Mills is. That's the difference, and I think that difference is pretty sizable, which is why you see I've got Mac Jones graded as QB4 in this draft, a first-round talent, whereas I've got Davis Mills sitting there as a third-round talent. Like, you guys could tell me if I'm wrong, why you feel I'm wrong about Davis Mills, but I promise you, when you look closer and you look at these different elements that I call out, you'll realize, you know what, yeah, he might be getting a little too much smoke right now, people potentially trying to out-sleuth themselves in this draft process.